become a
This
DevOps
conference will
engineer.
now be recorded.
Okay, you want to become a DevOps engineer and want to do a domain switch, in the IT. Like, is anyone already in the IT and want to do a domain switch? Okay, you're in the IT, right? Okay, so which background are you from? PHP, full stack developer. Okay, great. Anyone else, guys? Anyone else in the IT and want to do a domain switch and etc. Okay, okay, not a problem. So it's relatively let's say a mix of students or a mix of participants out here who relatively have, let's say, a very low understanding or no understanding about what really IT is. Okay, so this class is intended for the same, meaning we will have to start from the very scratch of what cloud really is, and we'll understand what DevOps is and etc. So if you're not familiar with an IT background, not a problem at all. Like, this is definitely for you all. Like, you don't have to have a predefined knowledge or you don't have to read anything before before coming to the class. I'll make sure that everyone is comfortable with the pace, everyone is understanding what we are delivering out here. Okay, with that, let's just start. Or before I go ahead and teach, I'll have to tell something about myself, right? Because who am I to teach you all, right? So this is Kiran here. So I overall have like about 9.5 experience in the IT industry right now, and I began my career as an Azure administrator. I've been as an Azure administrator for about 3 years, and after that I made a switch into something known as DevOps. So as being an Azure administrator, it gave me an edge to come into DevOps engineering, and since then I've been working with an organization as a DevOps engineer. And apart from that, I am Azure. I mean, I have a lot of Azure certifications like AZ104, which is an administrator. I'm an Azure certified DevOps engineer and a Microsoft certified trainer. So I have been teaching a lot of batches. I have been taking corporate trainings. I've been taking offline trainings, etc. So that puts me in a better position to understand, how to deliver a subject and what to deliver. And according to the market trends, I keep changing the pattern of the syllabus so that everyone, kinds of takes the best advantage of what the market expectation is out there. Okay, so that's in brief about me. So let's talk about Azure today. Like, that's what we are here for, isn't it? So we just talk about Azure today. But before actually going into Azure, right, let's talk about what cloud computing really is about. Okay, so does anyone out here, you did hear about cloud, right? So you did hear about cloud and you did hear about a lot of clouds available out there. So does anyone out here have an understanding or, kind of know what cloud really is? Anyone, like any bare basic definition, I'm good with that. Anyone, guys, online, offline? If you're online, you can unmute yourselves and uh, just tell about what your experience with cloud is. Or if you're offline, you can just right away talk about it.
Yeah, so that's okay. I can say like okay, we can use the cloud since
Hmm.
earlier era. Like we use Gmail services, okay, mail services. So it's
Hmm.
it itself a cloud. Like okay, we just use their service. We are not
Okay.
bothering about their infrastructure and all. So
Okay.
it's a cloud. So the same
Okay.
way we can, yeah,
Okay.
we do not
Anyone
have to
else,
worry
guys? Any
about
other thoughts?
yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. Okay. 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 Great. Great thought on that. Anyone else, guys? Does anyone know about, or anyone else has a different thought about what's already said?
Like Ravi here. Actually, cloud computing is it's like replacement of on-premises databases, like
Hmm.
on-premises servers.
Okay. Hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
Great. So yes, there are a couple of thoughts out here telling that okay, fine, it's a replacement to on-premises servers. It's a place where you can store, your data and etc. That, as you rightly said, and it's a place that you can really rent out. Okay. But if, let's say, I just do a Google search, okay, which we popularly do, right? You just say what cloud engineering or what cloud is really. The definition comes out to be something like this. Guys, I'm sorry, but if you're not speaking, can you please go on mute so that it won't disturb anyone else? Thank you. So this is what the definition really talks about. So it just tells you that it's a delivery of infrastructure over the internet. Now, what does that really mean out here? Like, someone who's starting my career with a cloud engineer, or someone who's starting my career with the cloud out here, what does that really mean? When I search this meaning, it says it's just like delivery of infrastructure and services, let's say, over the internet. So let's try to understand this by going in by taking a very simple example like this. Okay, so let's say someone of you from this particular class out here comes up with an idea to design an application. Okay, let's say that is called Ola. But one thing out here is that one condition out here is that you're not designing this application in 2021. You're, let's say, designing the application in 1980. Okay, we are just taking a step back and going 30 years back and seeing how was the development in 1980s. Okay, so primarily, if I am, let's say, a business owner and I want to start up something like Ola, I now want to say, okay, fine, let's imagine that people back in 1980s also had a smartphone, and I want to deliver that application to people all over India. Okay, so this is my intended target, that okay, fine, people all over India just take their phones out, tap on an application called Ola, and then start booking the cab, and then start their journey with that. Okay, this is what I need. So what I'll do is that firstly I'll see, is there any developer available for me to develop my application? Right, this is the first thing what I'll understand, is that okay, fine, I need a developer to write something known as a code. So developers, what they do, they write code in different languages like .NET, PHP, Java, Python, Ruby. There are a lot of languages that are available out there. So I have a developer with me. I have a team of developers with me. They have written the code right now. Now, in order for my developers to take that code and turn it into an application and give it to people, I need some kind of a platform where I can put this code, right? I need some kind of a platform where I can place this code on, isn't it? This platform is what I call as a server. So I have a server where I can place my code. Now, in a very simple terminology, what a server is, very simple. A server is nothing but a piece of hardware which has something like RAM, hard drive, everything that what your computer has. Very simple. A server is nothing but it's just like a computer, but the capacity is magnified thousands of times than what your computer has to offer. Like your computer has, let's say, somewhere around, my computer has, let's say, somewhere around 8 GB of RAM. The server might have somewhere around thousands of GB of RAM. The computer has somewhere around like 1 TB of hard drive. The server will have something like thousands of terabytes of hard drive to save things out. So this is what a server really is. Now, then where do I buy this server? Now, I just cannot go ahead to a shop and just ask for a server, right? Because this is a huge configuration. And whenever you place the order, that's when the server is built. That's when the server is configured and delivered it to you. And back in those days, you did not have manufacture of servers in India. Even today, you have like, very minimal manufacture of servers in India. So what I had to do is like I had to approach a company like Dell or a company which used to manufacture servers. And all these companies were situated in the US only. So I had to basically place the order and I have to do a full payment in advance, telling that okay, fine, this is the server that I need, this is the capacity. Let's say I am taking a capacity of 1000 GB. I am taking, let's say, a RAM of 1000 GB, a hard drive of 1000 GB, and I'm saying okay, fine, this is what I need right now. Okay, fine. They have taken the money, they've taken the order, and what is the time to build this particular server? It takes about 60 to 90 days to build and deliver that server to you, because this is a very huge machinery, right? This is a very huge machinery what you're talking about. To build and to deliver it to you, they'll have to ship it out, right? They'll have to place it in a container inside a ship and kind of deliver it to you, that is sitting in India, right? Okay, great, they've delivered it to you. Where do you place this server, right? That's something that we need to again ask, is that this is a huge machine. It needs a proper electricity, a proper ventilation, a proper air conditioning, and etc. So I build a room something like this. The room that we are sitting in, I say okay, fine, I'll build a room something like this. I'll have a proper electrification and a proper, let's say, air conditioning and etc. and place a room like this and place those servers inside this room. Okay, so I also need to consider the cost of building this room, isn't it? I also need to consider the cost of building this room. Now, all this cost that I'm paying for buying a server and building this room and etc. is called capital expenditure. Meaning, whatever business that you're starting, that's a capital for you, right? All this is a capital for you, isn't it? So I can buy this. I mean, I can kind of build a room and etc. All is good done. Now, in order to maintain this server, I also need someone like engineers, right, who can maintain this out. And I'm calling them as a maintenance engineers out here, right? These are maintenance engineers that I basically hired to go ahead and maintain the server that I have purchased. This is what I'm doing right now. So what I'm doing in this business model is that even before I deliver the application to my customers, I'm spending about somewhere millions of dollars rupees before even my business starts. Even before my business starts, I'm spending around millions of dollars of rupees anticipating that my business will be a hit. There are two conditions out here. Okay, fine, you started your business, great. Let's take two conditions out here. Users have accepted your application, they're enjoying your application, they're booking cabs and everything. Okay, let's imagine that you have placed the order for the server considering that there'll only be about 1,000 users per a minute which are visiting your application, but your application is now a hit. They're not 1,000 but they're 10,000. Okay, the first condition. Then will this server that you have purchased out here, will this support the amount of request? No, because you've only considered about 1,000 people that are visiting and ordered some capacity out here. So what do you do now? You ideally go back to the manufacturer and say, okay, fine, this server is not really sufficient and I need another server, something like this. Again, what is the time? 60 to 90 days, right? Again, you'll have to pay upfront everything. Great, you have like purchased again, it'll take another 60 to 90 days to install the server. And there's also a maintenance cost to it, right? So this is something, the model what I'm operating in. That is case A. Case B is, let's say, your application is not really accepted by people, meaning your business is not really taking off right now. Okay. Now, what do you do with this infrastructure? Now, you cannot just go ahead to OLX and sell it outright because this is a very huge piece of infrastructure. Now, what do I do with this? That is the reason you do not have many companies today, what we call as startups, right? Today, we are only able to see startup culture because this model has changed. The model in way that I'm operating the model in way that I'm starting a business has changed. What's really happened out here is that I am no longer purchasing the servers. Rather, companies like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, IBM, whatever big giants that you can think, they are purchasing the servers. Okay, they are purchasing these servers, buying these servers, making sure that it has a room placed with ventilation, air conditioning, everything, placing it there, and now they are calling that particular room as a data center. Okay, so these are now called as DCs or data centers out here, where you have, let's say, tons and tons of servers, meaning you have not one, but not two, but multiple servers placed inside it. Now, what they said is that, okay, fine, all a user or let's say all a business needs right now is just some space, right? Because they want to use the server to basically host their code and deliver it to, let's say, the people, to the users, right? That's what they need right now. So why can't I now take this infrastructure, what I bought? So this is now called as the infrastructure, which is the server or the data center out here. Why don't I now take this infrastructure, use something like an internet and deliver it to, let's say, the business? So whatever I'm doing right now is that I'm very simply doing very simple thing. Today you have like gbps of internet. The internet speed is like grown that big, right? So you have 5G that is coming into picture. So these companies said, okay, fine, let's now take the best advantage of the internet that is available out there, take this infrastructure and rent it out. Now, very important terminology, I'm telling rent, I'm not telling buying. Okay, I'm not telling someone can buy these servers, someone can rent these servers. This is what is now called as a cloud. Is that this entire model right now changed into something like this, that all I need is just a laptop or just a machine that I just need, like the one that I have right now. Bare minimal configuration. You do not have to, let's say, have machines which are like very high configurations as such. Very bare minimal configurations and a good internet connection. That's it. All I need is a good internet connection, and this that you're seeing out here is the data center. This building that you're seeing out here is nothing but a data center which has all those servers what we are talking about. Now companies have started out to do this particular model or do this particular model of operation out here. Now, what are the biggest advantages of, let's say, or why, let's say, everyone is speaking about cloud today so much? Is very simple. I have immensely cut down on something known as capital expenditure. Now I do not have to have a room. I do not have to have maintenance engineers. I've cut down on all those costs, right? All I now need to start up a business has come down from 60 to 90 days to about 10 minutes. If you now say, okay, fine, I want to start up a business, if you have a code with you, going ahead and buying a website is a minutes of a game, right? Because you can just go ahead, buy a website, host your code, done, you're done. You're like, your business is already started. That's point A. Now, in the scenario A, I also said that, okay, fine, your application is now a hit. A lot of people are now started using, but you do not really account that particular number, right? You said there are only 1,000 people who are using per a second or per a minute. Now there are 10,000 people coming in. What do? You just place an order over the internet to the cloud provider, telling that, okay, fine, now the traffic has gone up. Can you please increase my infrastructure? The time that the cloud provider takes is not 1 day, it's not 2 days, it's 2 minutes. That's what the cloud provider right now takes. And the cloud provider here, in my case, let it be Amazon, or let it be Microsoft, or let it be, let's say, Google, is only going to charge you for what you're using. It's just like an electricity bill. It's like per a month you're using so many things out, so I'll only charge you for those many things. And it's like a postpaid connection, meaning only pay after you use. At the end of the month, I'll give you a bill. Please go ahead and use that bill and pay whatever your dues are, and you can start using the cloud that way. So that's what this really talks about. That's what this slide really talks about out here, is that what really are the advantages out here of a cloud is that these are the things that it's heavily cost saving, it's flexible in nature. You do not have to have something known as capital expenditure and etc. You do not really need to basically go ahead, buy the infrastructure, put everything and all that stuff, and all your performance, security, everything is like now taken care by the cloud provider out here. Okay, any questions still here, guys? Anything that I can take? Is everyone able to follow or understand? Is anyone having issues in following this?
No, Kiran, we're able to follow you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we are good.
Okay, great. So since that we spoke about what cloud providers are, we just need to take an example of what are the different types of clouds that are available out there in the market. Because since we are starting up our career with something known as a cloud, we need to understand what are the really available clouds out there in the market. So this is where brings us to something known as types of clouds. Okay, there are three types primarily. One is a public cloud, the other is a private cloud, the third is something known as a hybrid cloud. Meaning, as a customer, or let's say as a student of Azure, you will be following something known as a public cloud model where you are relying upon all the infrastructure, meaning whatever server, you're not buying anything, you're just renting it out. Meaning, as a company, let's say like Ola, I am just renting out some servers out there, meaning some machinery out there over the internet, and I'm just delivering my code on the internet using this particular model. And this model is now known as a public cloud model. This model is now known as what? A public cloud model. But there are a couple of organizations like, let's say, banking. Now, for a banking sector, it's not performance, it's security that kind of plays a mandatory role because you're dealing with customer information and all that stuff, right? So let's say a bank like HDFC buys their own servers, puts it in a data center and etc. If I do that, meaning buying my own servers and maintaining them, I do that, then it's known as a private cloud. Meaning this is my own infrastructure, I will maintain it, I don't rent it out for someone else. Let's say the same organization now, like HDFC, says that, okay, fine, everyone is moving to the cloud, so I can take also a good advantage of it. So let me take all my customer data, put it in my own data center, which is my own server, and let me take some non-sensitive information or non-critical information and put it in a cloud like AWS, Microsoft, or Azure. So what HDFC right now is doing, it's taking the advantage of public cloud and also it has its own private cloud. This model is known as a hybrid model. You have about 70% of the companies now following something known as a public cloud model. About 10% of the companies still in private cloud model, they are where they are trying to kind of migrate, and the rest are in a hybrid cloud model.
Kiran, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you please once again explain what a hybrid cloud is?
So let's say, okay, fine. So did you follow the public cloud and the private cloud? Like where you were
Yes,
able to
yes,
get
I
that?
did.
Okay,
Yes,
so hybrid cloud is nothing but a combination of both. Meaning, let's say like a banking organization, which is HDFC, tells that okay,
mm-hmm.
fine, a small amount of my data should sit in, or I'm okay to go ahead and put some small amount of data with a cloud provider like Microsoft Azure or Amazon
Okay.
AWS, which is nothing but a
Mm-hmm.
service delivered over the internet, and a good amount of data in my own data center. Meaning in my own office, if there is a server room, meaning that there's a data center, I'll put all that data, which is customer sensitive and etc. I'll put it in, let's say, my own servers, and I'll say now it is a hybrid cloud, meaning I'm taking the advantage of Azure. At the same time, I'm not compromising on my security. So it's a combination of public plus private. That's a hybrid cloud model out here.
Got it. Thank you, Kiran.
Okay, great. So we have right today we have a lot of clouds out there, meaning there are a lot of cloud providers out there, just like we have mobile providers like BSNL or Airtel or Vodafone, everyone, right? In the same way, we have a lot of cloud providers. Like the three big giants that you hear today are GCP, which is Google Cloud Platform by Google, AWS, which is Amazon Web Service by Amazon, and Azure by Microsoft. Like these are three giant players. I wouldn't say that these are the only cloud providers, but these are three giant cloud providers, and most of the people will actually kind of rely upon these three clouds out here. Then the question that you might have is that why do I choose Azure over AWS? Everyone would have done their own Google searches and kind of come to the class, isn't it? Telling that what is my incentive to go to a cloud like Azure versus AWS, isn't it? That's a very common question that everyone does have. Now, if I were to talk about Azure versus AWS as such, one thing that you'll have to understand is that AWS primarily operates on something known as a Linux based operating systems. Meaning, in order for you to basically, as a let's say, as an employee of let's say cloud or let's say DevOps, to interact with a cloud, the first thing that I'll be seeing is that which one is easier to interact with, right? That's the first takeaway that I actually want to have, is that which one is easier to interact. Now AWS something comes with something known as a Linux background, meaning you do not have something known as GUI, graphical user interface, like you have on your phones where you can see and touch and feel, right? You cannot do that with something like AWS has something known as Linux, and you need to have a basic understanding. I wouldn't say an advanced understanding, but a basic understanding of Linux programming language in order to interact with AWS. Second, one of the biggest advantages of going for Azure is that 80% of the Fortune 500 companies today are either using or either switching to a cloud like Azure. The very latest example is the Geo deal with Azure. Now, whatever Geo connections that you're using, whatever Geo databases that you're using are hosted out of Azure. Are today are going and getting hosted out of Azure. And Microsoft Azure has a lot of customers across the world. One of the biggest customer that Microsoft Azure has is the US Defense Department. So US Defense Department, their Air Force, Navy, Naval, all those databases, right, are hosted out of Azure using a public and a private cloud model. So this is one of the biggest takeaway from Azure, is that it's easy to learn. Most of the companies are using it. And also one thing that you have to understand here is that Azure is a Microsoft product. It integrates well with something known as Windows. Azure, when it started, was only or initially designed for something known as Windows. And in any company that you've been working, right, primarily, or 90% of the employees, right, they work on a Windows based operating system, isn't it? Linux is something for, let's say, a developer's game and etc. 90% of the, let's say, employees where you're working, they use something known as a Windows operating system, and Azure integrates very well with Windows. Reason being, Azure has a good job market today. Like if you take your resume, put skills like Azure and DevOps, and put it on some websites like Naukri or Monster, I'm pretty sure you land job in, let's say, below 45 days. That's the period what I'm looking at. Like within 45 days, you will, basically end up getting into a job. That's how good the market today is with Azure release. And even if you look at the trends, like there is a lot of migrations that is going from AWS to Azure. The reason being, you do not need a lot of technical expertise when you're dealing with a cloud like Azure, but you need some kind of an expertise when you're dealing with a cloud like AWS. So that's the biggest take, or that's, let's say, the biggest reason why you'd like to basically switch to Azure, or why you'd like to basically learn Azure. And also, the data centers, what we're talking in the starting slide, right? Say I told that, okay, fine, companies are buying the data centers and, or buying the servers and placing them into a room known as a data center, isn't it? Earlier, when this all started, now Azure basically started in somewhere early 2000s. When this started, they had data centers only in like a couple of locations in US. Today, this is the map of the data centers what Azure really has. Now, this is an image that I've took somewhere around 2018 or 19. But today, the data centers across the world that Azure offers are somewhere around 54. Each and every location, or each and every continent across the world, has at least one data center. They at least have like one data center out here. So, the meaning here is that it is easily accessible by the business. Meaning, if I'm a customer from India, I do not have to all the way go to US and rent out my services. I already have data centers in India. I can take those data centers and rent those services out there. This is one of the biggest thing, and this is how is the growth trend of Microsoft Azure. And especially if you basically look at the statistics in the lockdown period, from starting from 2019 to, let's say, today, Azure has grown somewhere around 170 percentage to what it was there earlier. The amount tells you that what were the migrations, or how were the migrations from, let's say, to Azure. Like any cloud today is equally good. That's something that I would say. But the incentive that you get with Azure is that if you're starting your career with it, it's easier to learn. It's relatively easier to learn when compared to a cloud like AWS, because you do not need some background like Linux, right? You do not need something like a Linux background. But are we here only for Azure? No, not really. We are here to learn something known as DevOps, right? So that's what everyone really here is. And I started out with something known as a cloud, something like Azure. So why did I start out with cloud? Because to know what DevOps is, you'll know, or you need to understand what a cloud really is. So that's how you need to really start out, right? So what DevOps is, guys? So anyone has any idea about it? Development and operations. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. Okay. Anyone else? Any thoughts on DevOps? Anyone, guys, online, offline? You all can feel free to unmute yourself and kind of speak out.
DevOps is a combination of dev and operation teams. So
Hmm.
they will work for to resolve the issues in between development and operation teams to
Hmm.
deploy the complete process.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, fair enough. So yes, it is, let's say, a combination of development and operations. That's why the term called DevOps is actually coming into picture, which is development plus operations out here. But what really is, let's again understand with an example. So this is a traditional software development mechanism. What I call is nothing but a traditional software development mechanism. Let's say you're a developer. Let's understand things from a developer's perspective, because that's where everything really starts, isn't it? That's where things start out here, because they write the code and they kind of operate the code and etc., right? And also, if it's getting hot in here, can you please switch on the fan if it's okay? Cool, thank you. Okay, sorry for that. So let's understand things from a developer's perspective. Let's say I'm a developer who's sitting behind this machine and writing a code. Like, I've spent a good amount of time, let's say about 3 or 4 months, to basically write a code for the entire product, right? Now, before I go ahead and convert this code into something known as an application, there should be someone who's coming in and testing my code, right? Because my code needs to go through something known as a QA process, quality analysis, for which I have a team called as a testing team. I have a team called as a testing team. Now, what does the testing team do out here? Is very simple. They will try to identify what are the issues with the code that the developer has written. So this is what they try to do, right? So they'll take, let's say, another month. So developers already taken 3 months. Now the QA is taken another month, hypothetically, to test, to see what exactly the code is or how exactly the code is, and they'll give a report telling that, okay, fine, there are something known as issues with the code, or in a technical terminology, we call them as bugs with the code, right? And they'll push back, or they'll say, or they'll come back to the development team and say, okay, fine, you know what, there are some issues with your code, can you please rectify it? Okay, can you please go ahead and rectify the issues, meaning resolve something known as bugs out here. The developer will again come back, work on that code, say, okay, fine, this is good. Now again he'll give it to the QA team, right? Meaning there is nothing but a through and fro between the development and the QA team. Meaning the developer is writing the code, the QA is testing it, pushing it back to the developer, telling that there are issues with the code. The developer is again rectifying it and again pushing it back to the testing team and etc. This process somewhere, let's say, takes around 6 months. Okay, now the point is my code is good. The tester is certified that the code is good right now. Now I need to take the code to the next stage. Now what is the next stage? Taking the code and putting it onto the server that is sitting in some data center, right? Because I need to basically make sure that this code is now converted into an application and people can use it. Now this is where a team known as operations teams comes into picture, where operations tells that, okay, fine, you're done with the development, you're done with the testing, great. Now give us the code, let us take the code, and now basically go take this code and deploy it or put it on top of a server, and this server now can act as a hosting machine for your code. Meaning now I want to convert this code into an application, let's say something like Ola. But will they do it directly? Will they take it, deploy it directly? No, they won't do that. Even the operation team tests the code to see whether the code is usable by the user. Like, I basically will release my code only to a small set of users, take their feedback, understand how the code is working, and only then take my application to something known as the real environment. Meaning the Ola application, what we see is the real environment, what we talk about. Now, if the operation team finds out any issue out here, then what will they do? Ideally, they will again come back to the development team and say, okay, fine, we see that there are issues with the code, we are not really satisfied, please work on this again. Okay, now I have already said that the development and the QA testing procedure, right, that took somewhere around 6 months. Now the operations again is testing, taking around 2 months. Now the deadline for me to develop this code and give it to the customer entirely is around 9 months. This is what I've taken a contract from, let's say, an application known as Ola. Like, I said the business owner of the Ola, telling that, okay, fine, I'll give you the entire code in 9 months. But this is not happening. The reason this is not happening is that there is a constant tug of war between the developer, the QA, and the operations guys, right? Because the operation guy only thinks from the operation perspective, QA only thinks from a QA perspective, developer only thinks from a developer perspective. Now there should be a coordination between these three teams. Now this model of development, right, what we used to follow was called as a waterfall model of development. It's known as a waterfall model because the flow is flowing from the developer to the tester, tester to, let's say, the operations, right? So it's nothing but a linear model of development or a waterfall model of development where I did not have enough scope to analyze what is happening, to see what is the issue, and to understand how can I rectify the issue in a short span of time. Now, I now say, okay, fine, this is not really working out fine for me. I need the development of the code or the life cycle for the development of the code to get shortened, right? Because I cannot take 9 months to deliver an application. I cannot do that. I want to make sure to reduce this period of time. So I need a team or I need someone to understand from a developer's perspective, but acts as an operation guy. That's where DevOps comes into picture. That's where DevOps as a practice comes into picture. Now we are not doing anything, or we are not reinventing anything out here. We are not basically going and telling the developer that, you know what, this is not how you should develop your code. Or we are not going ahead to the operations and telling that, okay, fine, this is not you have to supposed to operate. We're not doing that. We are making sure that everyone operates in a close coordination, that there is a clear transparency when the developer is developing the code, when the QA is testing the code, and the operations is releasing the code. That's where a DevOps team comes into picture, and that's where a tool or a technology called Azure DevOps comes into picture. Now, if you were to look at the internet, this would have been a very popular diagram for Azure DevOps. Now, instead of my code or instead of my development going in a linear cycle, I now have a cyclic flow that I am now onboarding all the teams here. I am saying, okay, let the developer not develop the code on his local machine, meaning don't do that on your local machine. Come to the cloud. Let the QA test it on the cloud and let the operations also come to the cloud and release the code on the cloud. Now I am making sure that everyone now has a close coordination with each other. And what this does right now is essentially it improves something known as the efficiency of the code delivery. Two, it makes sure that I'm continuously testing the code before I'm actually delivering it to the customer. This is what DevOps has really done, and it has changed the entire industry in an immense way. You earlier also had a role like a DevOps, but it was not formal enough telling that, okay, fine, you're a DevOps engineer. Developers used to do the DevOps work and QAs also used to do the DevOps work, but it wasn't really beneficial. That's where a skill set as such came into picture. And that's where a tool known as Azure DevOps came into picture. And Azure DevOps has really changed the way we look at things out. Because before Azure DevOps is, I think I'll tell you, it's a very relatively recent tool. I would tell you the origin of Azure DevOps was somewhere around 2012, which is a very, very recent tool out here. Before Azure DevOps came into picture, in order to achieve something known as a DevOps practice, you basically rely upon third-party tools, and famous third-party tools are like Jenkins, Octopus. All these tools were third-party integrations. What happened there is that you did not get something known as an SLA, service level agreement. Meaning, if let's say you run into an issue, how would you resolve it? You do a lot of Google search, understand why the issue is, and etc. But in a real business scenario, right, you cannot take so much of time. You cannot take so much of luxury out there. Reason being, Azure DevOps came into picture and Azure DevOps said, okay, fine, or Microsoft said, okay, fine. If some issue comes into picture, I'll resolve it in less than 4 hours. That's the SLA what I offer based upon the license that you take. I'll resolve it less than 4 hours and I'll make sure that your entire code delivery is up to the mark. This is what Azure DevOps really said out here. And that's the reason you see a lot of people now using Azure DevOps. There is a good amount of shift, I would say, to Azure DevOps. And that's the reason the resumes are getting picked up very fast. Today, when you put a skill like Azure DevOps, as an employee who's someone, or let's say, who's someone applying for a job, the growth rate is really good. The packages on the offer are very good. Let's say if you have, or if your resume has an experience somewhere around 3 to 4 years of Azure DevOps out here, the average package that is offered in the market today is not less than 10 lakh per annum. I'm telling the average is not less than 10 lakh per annum. So your career actually begins with somewhere around 10 lakh per annum if you're starting with something around 3 or 4 years of experience of IT or not. I mean, any experience, but if you have a skill called Azure DevOps in your picture or in, let's say, in your resume, this is what is the package on the offer. This is what, let's say, yes, this is what, let's say, is what Azure DevOps has really done. Guys, any questions still here? Anything that I can take? Any questions that I can take, guys?
Kiran, how about a fresher? As I'm very new to this
Mhm.
Azure DevOps, so how about
Mhm.
the package offered for a fresher?
So as a fresher, right? So what you have to do is that you'll have to do a bit more of work in terms of
Mm-hmm.
certifications. Like if you're a fresher and just starting your career with Azure DevOps, I would highly recommend you doing two certificates. One is AZ
Mm-hmm.
104, the other is
Okay.
AZ 400. And as a fresher, someone who's starting your career with Azure DevOps, if you are entering into, let's say, at least a level 3 company, the package is
Okay.
around somewhere around 6 lakh per annum as a fresher.
Okay.
It's somewhere around 5.5 to 6 lakh per annum. That's what the bracket that I can tell you.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey,
Any
hey,
more
Kiran,
questions? Yeah, please go ahead.
the code automation, okay, it
I'm
is done
sorry.
by the DevOps engineer.
I'm sorry, I lost you. Can you please repeat your question, please?
The the code automation, okay, the
Mm-hmm.
developer develops the code. The testing
Mm-hmm.
is done by the testers.
Yes,
Whatever the code automation, when we do the deployment, it is done by
right.
the DevOps engineer.
It is, yes, it is done by the DevOps engineer. So the deployment is taken care by now by the DevOps engineer, and the DevOps engineer will support something known as the operations team. He'll support both the developers and the operations team out here.
Okay, what is
Okay,
the
so
role?
that's it.
Major role. What is the major role of the DevOps engineer? Okay, operation team will
Mm-hmm.
okay. For example, if they convert the code into a PowerShell script and they're
Mm-hmm.
gonna give a script to DevOps engineer. DevOps
Okay.
engineer use the script for the deployment.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what is the role of the DevOps engineer? What is
So
only deployment?
the technology that you see here, right, which is known as Azure DevOps,
Mm-hmm.
this is primarily maintained, managed, and given by DevOps engineers. This is something that we understand. This is something that we take care of. One. So one, you take care of, let's say, the tool known as Azure DevOps. Now, whatever goes into the tool known as something like pipelines and etc. Would have heard something known as a pipeline. So DevOps engineers are primarily responsible to build and maintain something known as pipelines.
In the
A
Azure.
in no, this is in DevOps. Now, I'm not talking about
Okay.
Azure, but you also have to maintain the infrastructure on Azure. Like
Okay.
whatever or wherever your code is going in, right?
Mm-hmm.
That infrastructure is maintained by you. So that's the reason there are many roles for a DevOps engineer, like a build and release engineer, like an infra engineer or infra maintenance engineer, or primarily called as an Azure DevOps engineer out here. Okay,
Okay.
so this is where we come into picture. This is where the practice known as DevOps comes into picture out here.
Okay. Are you going to show us some examples, like when you going
Hmm.
forward? Like,
Yes.
for example,
So
if you have Ansible, so how
sorry.
a DevOps engineer, if I having an Ansible tool, so
Okay.
how a DevOps engineer will integrate with Azure?
So the thing is that you don't need Ansible here. That's the biggest advantage, or that's the point that I'm emphasizing on. You
Mm-hmm.
don't need tools like Chef, Puppet, Ansible, and everything,
Mm-hmm.
configuration manager, and everything. You don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything now is replaced by something known as Azure DevOps, and the skill itself is known as an Azure DevOps engineer and not a DevOps engineer.
Okay.
If you were coming from a background like AWS, then I would have definitely suggested that okay, fine, there are tools like Vagrant, Chef, Puppet, and etc. Please
Mm-hmm.
know about it and please know what how they work and etc. You don't have to do it with Azure DevOps. This is one tool which integrated everything. That's the reason I said it changed the way the market is like right now behaving.
Okay.
Meaning the skill set that you are kind of working on has now focused or is now focused on something known as Azure DevOps only. And when compared to tools like Ansible that you highlighted, or Chef, something like that, Azure
Mhm.
DevOps is relatively easy to learn.
Okay.
Like as a fresher, I don't need to learn, or as someone who's starting with this my career with this particular tool, I don't have to learn all those technologies out there. And whatever examples that we are giving out here is going to be completely real time,
No, I
because
have a scenario. That's the reason I was asking because
I'm sorry, I didn't get you. I'm sorry.
I have a scenario where I run an Ansible script which integrates with Azure and builds my
Hmm.
images. So that's the reason I was
Correct.
asking how this is correlated.
Exactly. See, that's the reason the course content is not going into the open source of it. The course content is rather relatively working with Azure, inside Azure, and tools native to Azure, like Ansible. Whatever, let's say you are telling that you have an email functionality that you can achieve with Ansible. The same thing I can use Azure DevOps to achieve the same thing. So I don't really have to look at that particular tool out here. So that's the reason I will not be covering Ansible and etc. This is
Okay.
something that will not be covered in this particular curriculum.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
Any more questions here, guys?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, which
Yep.
tool
Please go ahead.
actually they are using in that? So in AWS, we are using Ansible Chef as one of our, you
Mm-hmm.
said. So
Right.
now, what exactly which tool are using to do those kind of coding and everything in Azure DevOps?
So so coding, everything is taken care by the developer still. Now that's what I said, is that coding is still taken care by the developer. We are not going to develop the code, meaning we are not going to write the code. But after
Okay.
the code is written, instead of Jenkins or instead of Chef or Puppet or something like that, the
Okay.
only tool that we are using right now, the tool name is itself known as Azure DevOps.
Okay. Tool name is
The
Azure
tool
DevOps.
Azure DevOps. So you don't have to install it, you don't have to download it. It's just like, go to the internet, type in something known as dev.azure.com, and you have something known as Azure DevOps with you to play around with.
Okay.
Okay. So one quick question I'll take from the offline class. Yes, you had one.
So how much expertise into for programming language?
Can you please give me one quick minute? I'm just taking a question. Can you please give me one quick minute so I can circle back to you? Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, please go ahead. Hmm. Correct. Hmm. Any programming language is your question? Hmm. So you don't really have to come from a Windows background, because the course is designed in such a way that the first 20-25 days you won't be touching DevOps at all. You will be touching something known as administration of Azure, because that's how the course is. Or let's say if you look at the certification, something known as AZ400, which is something expected out of a DevOps engineer, they would say that you either have to come from a development background or an administrative background. So we will be covering administration, and then we will be looking at something known as DevOps. So you don't have to come from a Windows administration background to begin with. Okay. You don't have to come from a Windows administration background to begin with. But yeah, like Linux administrators in Azure DevOps. See, if you have an understanding of Linux, like any programming language, if you have an understanding, that's an added advantage. Like you can use the same skill set over here, but in a bit different way out here. So the skill set is definitely an advantage. But if you don't know what Linux is, not a problem. No, in real time, let's say I'm a real time employee. Like I hardly have written Linux scripts in the entire 9 years of my career. So I am not really coming from a Linux administration background. I was coming from a Windows administration background. So I had zero knowledge with Linux. So I don't use Linux in my daily workload. So Linux is something that we don't touch at all. Like a very, I would say 5 or 10% of the syllabus is kind of based on Linux. When we especially see something known as Dockers and etc., that's where we see something known as Linux. But a very basic understanding of Linux is what I'm kind of expecting out of you, and that's also something which we cover in the sessions. Okay. I think someone had a question. I'm sorry I cut you. Can you please go ahead?
Yeah,
You said,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Correct. Actually, my background is not from the programming language. I am administrator of Office 365.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you. Can you please be a bit louder?
Actually, my background from administrator, right?
Okay. Okay.
So I'm not expertise in the programming.
Okay.
So how much programming require for this
Okay. So
DevOps?
okay. So this is a very popular question: is that do I need to know programming to kind of start DevOps? I'm not a programmer. I do not know anything about programming.
Uh,
You don't have to,
mhm.
but
Next question
you.
is so
Mhm.
yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So I was telling that you do not have to learn something like a programming, but
Mhm,
we will be covering something known as a scripting language in the form
mhm,
of something known as PowerShell,
mhm,
in the form of something known as PowerShell scripts. Because as a DevOps engineer, the primary role that is expected out of you is to automate things, is to
mhm,
make sure do you automate things out. That's where you will have something known as PowerShell coming into picture. And PowerShell is like, I would say, related to something like C, built upon, let's say, something like C.
No,
So,
I know PowerShell. Actually, PowerShell actually, if talk about the PowerShell scripting,
mhm,
so that is also if you go and deep down, also related to programming like a program. If you need to fetch any report from the
mhm,
AD in Office 365, we need to
mhm,
write down the 2 or 3 lines for script length, right?
correct. But that
So
isn't a
we
programming language, isn't it? That's a scripting language.
yeah,
So there
correct.
is a
So
big amount of difference between a programming and a scripting,
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
isn't it?
So yeah,
So,
so
yeah.
you will teach here the scripting from initial starting point.
Yes, from the very scratch of it, like we'll start with the ABCs of PowerShell script,
All
and we'll
right.
see how
So
can you, yeah, how can you develop on, let's say, the existing knowledge. So this is what we'll be seeing.
one more question. Yeah.
Mm.
So it is especially for only DevOps, a combination of 104 and DevOps.
Yes, this is a combination of AZ104, which is administration,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
AZ400, which is DevOps engineering. Because
Yes.
for you to learn or for you to basically see what AZ400 is, you'll need to have an understanding of administration. So that's where we are starting out.
You will explain here only the basic understanding of AZ100. Yeah, explain each and everything 104.
No, it's a in-depth analysis of AZ104. So after this, after let's say going through this particular curriculum, just by doing a minimal amount of study, you will be able to clear AZ104 is what I can guarantee. So it's a good amount of in-depth on AZ104 and AZ400, both the combinations of this.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Any more questions, guys? Any more questions that I can take?
Yeah,
One more
Kiran, good
question.
morning.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Kiran, good morning. This is Ram.
I'm sorry, I didn't get you.
Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Kiran, this is Ram. This is Ram.
Okay.
See, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
AWS is one which need couple of many other tools besides AWS administration.
Correct.
But Azure is something is so comprehensive, it contains everything rather than depending upon the other tool.
That's not Azure, but that is Azure DevOps. Now,
Yeah,
what I said
Azure
is what's
DevOps.
Azure. Correct.
See, AWS DevOps are multiple other tools other than Azure
Correct.
AWS administration.
Correct.
Whereas in Azure administration and Azure
Mhm.
DevOps requires a very less number of tools when compared with AWS
Correct.
because everything is inbuilt and provided within Azure framework.
Correct.
Everything is integrated, so the dependency on the other tools gets reduced drastically.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. And second question is, we have
Mhm.
two people here. One is a developer, the other one is a tester.
Correct.
Developer develops, a tester tests it, and just
Mhm.
pushes them onto the production environment, and then the
Mhm.
operation people come. Operations
Correct.
are the database admins, the operating system admins, and who maintains the code and runs and give the
Hmm.
support.
Correct. That's
Am I
correct.
right? Yeah.
Correct. That's
So
correct.
you have three sets of people here: the developer,
Mhm.
the tester, and the operations. Where does
Correct.
exactly the DevOps engineer come in between all the three?
So we come into picture in taking all these streams to the cloud, like
So you
in
encompass
making.
all the three.
Sorry.
You encompass all the three. Integrate with all
We
the three.
encompass all these things. Yes, we encompass all these things, and we together call this as something like a DevOps practice, where we
Okay.
say, okay, fine, the developer is now also developing the code on the cloud, tester is testing it
Mhm.
on the cloud, automating it, and operations team is also integrated here.
Okay.
And all these three things together, I'm calling it as a build and release pipeline, and that's what together brings you something known as a DevOps practice.
Okay.
So we primarily are making sure that we make sure we support the developer. We make sure we also give a good amount of support to the operations by using a DevOps practice. So this is where we come into picture in a nutshell.
So this DevOps standard or framework, whatever it is, you see that you
Mhm.
ensure that it is properly, the principles are properly followed, properly implemented, and finally the end target is achieved.
Correct. That's correct.
That is lessening the time of development and deployment from 9 months to somewhere around one third of it.
Correct. That's correct. That's
So
exactly
you
what we're doing out here. Mhm.
right. So and one more thing, I'm coming from an admin background, as
Mhm.
I already discussed. I have
Okay.
a fair amount of knowledge on operating systems, databases, and ERPs. I do
Mhm.
come
Mhm.
from ERP line, Oracle applications, PeopleSoft, and SAP.
Okay.
So now, for the past 3 4 years, I was out of IT industry, and I'm staging a comeback again.
Okay.
So somewhere around, I'll claim past 5 years, I'll try to portray my experience and get into.
Mhm.
Would Azure give a launchpad for me to get into a job? I mean, face the challenge and get good number of opportunities, grow in the in the career. All these things, will that be possible by Azure?
All these things will not be possible by what? Sorry. Only Azure.
Yeah. No. See, first thing I need to get into the industry once again. I need to
Right.
sail through smoothly, get good number of
Mhm.
opportunities, and have a good career growth.
Right.
Will these three things be possible by choosing Azure and mapping it?
Like, are you talking about Azure Administrator only, but or are you also talking about Azure DevOps? Like, are you
Both,
talking about
both, both.
just
Whatever you want.
both? Yes.
Both.
So yes,
Hmm.
there would be an easy sail through. So when you're saying that you want to portray somewhere around 5 years of experience, if I were
Yes.
you, I would say portray 2 years of experience with Azure DevOps. That's it. Don't do more than two.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
rest
As
three
past three,
is
I'll put on that three.
ERP or let's say administration background, whichever background that you did work on, just put that three out there.
Yes.
So you're
Okay.
now a relatively a fresher to the DevOps industry. That's what we follow. That's how we kind of follow out here.
Yes.
Let's say if you're
Hmm.
coming from a different background into a DevOps, you're relatively considered as a fresher, but your entire IT experience will be considered like about 5 years.
Okay.
That will be an easy
Okay.
sail through.
Yes.
Okay.
And once getting with 2 years of experience in Azure,
Mhm.
what is the bracket pay bracket can expect?
So as I said, somewhere around 5 years, it's not less than 10 lakh per annum. So 10 lakh is where it
Okay.
starts. It also
Okay.
depends upon what is the previous package. Let's say it is
Okay.
6 lakh per annum is your previous package. Today in the
Hmm.
market, I see a growth capacity for DevOps, especially for this particular role. People are offering or companies are offering somewhere around 80 to 90% of hike on, let's say, your previous package. So that's how
Okay.
the growth capacity is really today out here.
Okay. Right. So programming part, you don't need to worry.
You don't have to worry about. I mean, you don't have to worry about the programming. I would also not say it is a programming. It is a scripting. Like programming is
Yeah.
different from what scripting really is. So you don't have to worry about that part. Like
Yes.
we'll take care of that. Like
Right. Right.
we are going to look at what is the very scratch of it, and we're going to take care of it.
See, and one more question, final question from my side. I have gone
Mhm.
through many other Azure syllabus contents. Comparing to those, you have portrayed very less number of tools. but that sound realistic to me. Whereas other syllabuses, whatever I have gone through, they had almost around 10 tools.
Right.
But whereas
So
your syllabus content had just 3 to 4.
that's correct. So if I portray 10 tools out here and if I say that I'll cover it in 2 months, I wouldn't be doing justice to each and everything.
Yes.
Because the job role, right, it doesn't require really 10 tools out here to kind of handle. If you're an AWS engineer, I would have said yes, you need 10 tools out here to handle those. That's the
Okay.
reason it's relatively a bit difficult to kind of get into AWS DevOps. But here, right, when you're actually looking at Azure, you just need tools that are inside Azure, like you're native to Azure right now. So that's the reason I'm not really portraying things out.
Right.
That's the
Whatever you have
reason
portrayed is enough. Whatever you have portrayed is enough.
that's more than enough.
Hmm. And one more thing, see, I come from an age background into mid 40s,
I'm
right?
sorry, you come from what?
See, I'm from an age background of 40s, mid 40s. I fall into mid 40s.
Okay.
Will the age be a criteria here to get into the industry? Will it be a constraint?
No, age is never a constraint, especially in the IT industry to begin with.
Okay, okay.
It's just the portrayal of, let's say, the profile, basically, meaning don't portray more than 3 years of DevOps experience. That's the only thing that I would suggest.
Yes, my final question. For a person like me who is around 46 years,
Mhm.
will having AWS plus Azure will be an advantage?
At this point, don't really think of AWS because you'll be mixing a lot of things out. So
Okay.
just start with one cloud. The
Yes.
underlying technology is the same for any cloud.
Yes.
The underlying technology is the same for any cloud when you begin with. But
Mm.
the intention out here is to begin with something which is easier to learn. That's what is
Yes.
the idea.
Yes. I'll learn this because
Mhm.
getting a job is easy. Competition is less when compared to
Mhm.
AWS. And to get into the industry, it will be a cakewalk if you put in the enough amount of hard work.
Mhm.
So I'll choose Azure and get into. But once I'm into the industry, maybe within a year's time, will it be an
Mhm.
advantage to have other clouds also under your sleeve?
It's definitely an added advantage. I would say that it's definitely an added advantage to have other clouds. But yes, you can take that apart from, let's say, after Azure, you can go into another cloud like GCP or AWS according to the interest.
After having an year experience, if you have a Linux based cloud and also a Windows based cloud,
Mhm.
maybe that will
Mhm.
fancy your chances of getting a brighter job in the future course.
Uh, that's right. I mean, but at this point, we are not really targeting AWS as such. At this
No,
point,
not
we are
you,
just
not
targeting. Mhm.
no. This is completely pertaining to me. I'm asking. I'm not in asking in general.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, if I get a job, if I get a breakthrough in Azure, work there,
Mhm.
grab the knowledge for 1 year, then if I equip with AWS also, maybe
Mhm.
within 1 year down the line, will that fancy my chances of sailing to a better position?
That's right. You will definitely have that. That's a better advantage out there.
Okay, okay, right.
Okay.
Because as I'm 46, when I'm compared with the people of 30s and people in 20s, maybe if I have
Mhm.
something extra, then I'll be valued more.
That's
My
right. That's right.
experience will be valued more. So having AWS and Azure in a long run will be a fetching advantage.
That's correct. So, like, can I take another question from someone else if
Yeah, yeah.
that's okay with you?
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Any more questions, guys? Any more questions with this? But so the thing is that what are we going to cover in this class, or what is the length, or what is the duration, right? That's something that everyone would ask, right? So let's see what are we really going to cover out here. This is what we are going to start out with. Now, this is going to be the entire course curriculum on what we are covering out here. Is that firstly we will have to begin with the very basic of cloud to understand what really cloud is, and then look at how to interact with cloud using something like a script like PowerShell and a couple of tools like ARM templates and Azure DevOps to begin with on, let's say, the Azure side of things. So it's going to be Microsoft Azure, which is the primary tool that, or which is the primary technology what we are going to look at. Then we are going to basically go ahead and look at what PowerShell is, and we are also going to deal with something like called an ARM template. This is something that is there in the market today, and we are going to look at Azure DevOps. In the same time, we are also going to cover a few open source technologies. And the most asked open source technology today is something known as Terraform and something called as Docker and Kubernetes. This is also something that we are going to go ahead and cover things out on. Okay. And the length of the syllabus, or let's say the amount of days that I would require to cover this, would be around 55 to 60 classes. I'm not telling days, it is 55 to 60 classes out here. The classes are going to be from Monday to Friday, and they are going to be from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning, and they'll be 1 hour of length. Each and every class is 1 hour, and so it will take about 60 hours for me to complete all these things out. So I'm going to start with Azure, and then we are going into DevOps. That's what is the idea here, and that's what, let's say, is the curriculum here out here. Like you can attend online, offline. Like we already have like 2 batches already running in 8 to 9 and 9 to 10. So as of now, there is only one slot available, which is 7 to 8 in the morning. But it's not mandatory that you have to come to a class and attend. You can attend it online. If you have a doubts, you can definitely come here to the class and get it clarified.
Evening in
Can you just give me one second? What about, sorry?
in the evening,
He didn't get up.
any slot is available.
Just give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second out here. Just give me 1 second.
Hello.
Just give me 1 second out here. I'm just answering a question for the offline class. Please give me 1 second. So Git and GitHub, is it? So Git and GitHub will be taken care of something known as Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps will have something known as Git, GitHub, something known as Azure repos, also known as build and release pipelines. All these things comes under the DevOps practice. So we are summing up everything into something known as a DevOps practice out here. Okay. Yes, someone on online had a question.
In the evening,
Sir,
batch is available. Class
minerals in Azure DevOps.
Can one go at a time, please? Like Mujib, can you go, please? Yep, can you please go ahead?
Okay, Kiran, myself, I'm working already for some other company.
Okay.
Learn fast, I mean, way in the Azure DevOps and Azure admin level knowledge. And little bit I need PowerShell and as well. As of
I'm so sorry to stop you, but I'm not able to hear you properly. I'm not able to really receive your voice properly. There's a lot of background disturbance.
Hello, Kiran. Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah. Okay. If you don't mind, then can you please complete the session and then the question answer session are there? Oh,
This session is
it
actually
would be
complete.
great.
Like we are in a Q&A right now. So the session, the demo what I wanted to deliver is actually complete, and we are in a Q&A right now. So you can ask your questions now.
No.
Any questions, guys? Any questions?
hello.
One question from my side.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So, with the contents you are going to cover, will that
Mhm.
be useful? Will that be enough for us to go take the issues as tickets and solve with the claiming with the as we have claiming 2 years of experience and getting in? The amount
Mhm.
of knowledge which you are rendering here, will that be enough to go and solve the real time tickets?
More than enough, because we are going to basically see the content along with real time. So this is going to be more than enough out here.
Okay, so claiming 2 years, we can go and easily go and clear the tickets whatever is been given
That's correct.
for a 2 year old guy. And one more thing, any project kind of orientation within the course, so that tomorrow we need to show to a couple of
Mhm.
projects in the resume when you claim two
Right.
years. Will the so any help from your side regarding compiling the projects and showing and showcasing our skill set in the form of a project?
Definitely, because at the end of this course, that's what we are going to do. We are going to do a project out here, telling what
Okay.
exactly is the project, how do you integrate everything that you learn. That is
Yes,
what we
yes.
are going to do out here.
Because apart from the technical questions, there are many other questions being asked nowadays in the industry. As such, what are
Hmm.
the what is your project? Where does it start, and what is your role within it, and where at what stage it is now? What are the issues you have faced, and what is how do you interact with the team and with the management and with the client? These are the things where we need some sort of input from you.
Definitely, that is definitely going to be covered because as I'm a real-time employee, I know what is, let's say, the challenges, and I also take a lot of interviews on a daily basis.
Hmm.
So we know what an interviewer really asks. So
Right.
at the end of the course, we are going to do a couple of projects. We are going to do mock interviews before you actually go ahead and appear in the real interview. This is what
Okay.
is
Okay.
going to be done, and also
Right.
resume preparation guidance and etc. That's going to be given, of course.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kiran, can I attend it from another branch? I mean, other sections as well. Like you told before, you are already running two sessions, right? Eight
Correct.
to nine.
So the issue with that is that 8 to 9 and 9 to 10, right? So we have two sessions
Yes,
out
yes.
there. They're
Yes.
already, let's say, into 30 or 40 classes solid.
Yeah, it
So
is
they've
fine
already
for
covered 30 or 40. They've
yeah,
already covered 30 or 40 classes.
because I'm already working in the X company, so
Okay.
I'm in the bench right now. So maybe probably I don't know when I will be have the client round of interview. So before that, I
Okay.
need to learn properly. So I have basic knowledge, but I don't know
Hmm.
practical things,
Implementation. So see, I would
implementation.
suggest,
So I have,
though it will take time, though it is going to take time, start from the scratch because if you're attending from the middle, right, you won't be able to follow what were the earlier classes and what we do out. Guys, can you please suggest I would suggest basically going from the scratch out here. That's where you'll be able to follow and that's where you'll be able to connect the dots. That's very important for me.
Kiran,
will go with this section, and as well as can I attend for another one as well to improve myself more, because right now
You
I'm
can. Mhm. So I'm really not the institute coordinator out here. So I'm the faculty out here. So you can just have a word on the same with the institute coordinator.
okay.
Like wherever you got the link, you can have the word with them, and then they'll be able to clarify it.
And one more thing,
Kiran,
Kiran, here you are teaching for ARM templates and Terraforms, right? After
Mhm.
your classes, can I write myself one I mean scripts?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Sorry.
Uh, can I write for ARM templates after complete of your classes, ARM or
Yes.
Terraform?
Yes. You will be in a position to write the ARM on Terraform after the classes.
Okay, okay, fine. Yeah. Thank you.
Kiran, are you only going to focus on Azure DevOps?
Yes, so we are only going to focus on Azure DevOps and Azure. This is the main focus area that we have.
Okay. So if I need something not about Azure DevOps, if I need anything on WVD, Windows Virtual Desktop, the
Hmm.
concept of building up a Windows Virtual Desktop.
Right.
So whom I need to contact?
See, I'll be able to give you some documentations to read from, but I won't be able to cover it in the class. Let's say something concepts like Windows Virtual Desktop or AWS or something that open source side or something like that. That's something which we will not be able to take it in this particular curriculum. But
Mm-hmm.
I'll be able to give you some documentations, guide you to some documentations to see how you can read and how you can catch up with that.
Okay.
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 One more question, Kiran.
Hmm. Please go ahead.
What are the third-party tools which we are going to cover as
Dockers,
part of this course?
Kubernetes, and Terraform. Dockers, Kubernetes, and Terraform are the three third-party tools what we are looking at when we are
Okay.
covering this particular syllabus out here.
Okay. As far as my understanding goes, correct me if I'm wrong. What I know about Azure DevOps is it is a combination of source code management tool and tool which is capable of doing CI, continuous integration and continuous deployment.
Hmm. That's
Uh,
correct. That's absolutely right. So it's a combination of source code management, CI, CD, testing, and etc. So it's a combination of all these tools together, and that's the reason it's known as a DevOps practice out there.
and how is it a substitute for something like uh, Chef and Puppet, Chef, Puppet, and Ansible, the
Because you
configuration
don't have to
management
do a
tools?
so you don't have to do a configuration management using Chef and Puppet. You'll be configuring or you'll be maintaining the configuration using something like ARM or Terraform, and you'll be
Okay,
making sure to have the entire configuration maintained in the Azure DevOps pipelines. So
okay,
that's the reason we do not really need tools like Vagrant, Chef, Puppet, and etc.
okay. How deep into Terraform will we go with this course?
I would say between intermediate to advanced is what I would say.
Okay,
Not a basic, definitely. Intermediate to advanced level is what we will do with Terraform and also ARM and also PowerShell
okay.
programming. I mean, the automation and etc. Yeah.
I I am a DevOps engineer in a small startup near in
Hmm.
Hyderabad itself, but
Okay.
the thing is that I want to upgrade my skill set.
Hmm.
I am into these third party tools like GitHub, Git, Jenkins, and
Hmm.
all, but
Okay.
we are trying to migrate into the Azure DevOps.
Okay.
So what we use is the serverless framework to
Okay.
uh, manage the uh, configurations, and
Okay.
also how easy it would be for me to switch to Terraform, because I do have a good amount of knowledge using the Node.js serverless
Hmm.
framework to manage the
See, if
AWS
you have an
infrastructure.
understanding already about, let's say, a DevOps practice, it would be relatively easy for you to kind of go into Terraform and etc. You just need to understand the basic syntax of it, and that's what we'll be starting with, and we'll be basically going into somewhere like an advanced level out here.
Okay.
So the thing what I would like to notice you, Kiran,
Hmm.
uh, it's been like I can say I got around like have been working in United States. Okay, I'm in
Okay.
US.
Okay.
It's been like long term. I have been in US. I am from a different background. Okay,
Okay.
like application packaging, then SCCM, then Intune. Then I slowly using now Azure. Okay, that is one
Okay.
Windows Virtual Desktop. The
Okay.
main focus of my understanding is to focus on the ARM templates. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
how the templates works and how the download of the golden image does, and we
Okay.
have a like Ansible jobs running in and around.
I'm
Like
sorry, I didn't get you. I
we
lost you.
have a
Sorry.
lot of Ansible jobs running.
Okay. Okay.
So we want to get up and pull requests and the code
Hmm.
approve, and
Okay.
then this I mean like I would like to understand the what is the background, because it's like a mirror. Okay,
Hmm.
there is an Azure team who does all the work. We just do a mirror kind of thing because I'm into operations.
Okay.
Okay, I just do silent installation of the package, whatever the
Okay.
code and I do a deployment through SCM, through Intune, otherwise through a PowerShell. Okay,
Okay.
I give the developer code to the Azure team, and
Okay.
they use the code in ARM template, and they have a XML file PowerShell script which runs the PowerShell scripts, which
Hmm.
with my package, which is developer package. Okay, it's a batch file, whatever the executable I give in a silent
Okay.
parameter.
But what exactly is the specific question out here?
My specific question is I would like to understand the behavior of the ARM templates
Hmm.
on the building of the machine.
So if I were to talk about that, I'll have to actually go inside ARM template to tell you what really that is. But since this is, let's say, a demonstration of what we're going to do, I'm not going into it and telling what exactly is the ARM template, how do you build ARM templates and all that stuff. But yes, there is less. Yes, there is, a good amount of, demonstration out there available in the curriculum out here, telling how exactly would you do it, what exactly would you do it, and etc. So I'm not really going inside it. I'm just telling what we are going to do out here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm not going inside it at this point because it will confuse a lot of people, which I don't want to happen. I want to make sure that everyone from a different background, let be a fresher or let be an experienced person, start from a level playing field is what I'm trying to achieve out here.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I can understand.
Thank you. Okay, guys, so that's it from my end. The sessions are going to begin from Monday from 7 to 8. That's the batch that we have. So it's going to take somewhere around 55 to 60 classes to complete the entire thing. So I'm not talking about days, I'm talking about classes. So we are not really doing sessions on Saturdays and Sundays until necessary. Let's say if someone has a question or someone has a clarification, etc., we can definitely go ahead and take a session on Saturdays. So this is how the curriculum is, and we can start on Monday, guys. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Monday to Friday, right?
Monday to Friday, yes.
7 to 8.
I'm sorry.
Timing.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to know the
And
timing.
Nice talking to you.
Thank you, Kiran.
7 to 8. Timing is 7 to 8. 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning.
Okay, thanks, Kiran. Nice talking to
Thank you.
you. See you soon.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, guys.